Okay, welcome to Module 2. This is where it gets a bit more exciting. This is going to be video-led, this module, and what I'm going to cover is setting up a hosting account, a reseller account. I'm going to show you the account that I use and how it works. Now, it's important to note that there are countless other hosting companies that you can use. I have no agreement, or I don't get any money from the hosting company that I use in terms of me promoting it as the one that you should use, but I found it to be very good. Always there's problems with hosting companies, but on the whole, the company that I use, Heart Internet, have been very good, and I've used them since about 2012, something like that. I don't host all of my sites on this with this company, but the majority of them I do, because it suits most businesses. Some of my premium customers, my bigger customers, my corporate clients, I host with a different company, but the costs involved are significantly higher. So for the majority of your clients, you want a sort of mid-level hosting company that provides a very good service, good support. They have an easy control panel that you can use to set things up. Obviously the facility to register domains, handle renewals, transfers, etc. Set up email accounts, FTP accounts. Importantly, if you're going to be using WordPress, you need a company that does what's called a one-click WordPress install, which we'll cover later. And ideally you want to be able to give your clients control panel access if they want it, although it happens very infrequently that they need that. And I always prefer to use a UK-based company because I'm based in the UK. If you're in a different part of the world, you may want to use a local company to you. Main reason being language, obviously, although that's not such an issue these days because most people will speak English. It's more to do with time zone. If anything goes wrong, you kind of want to be in the same time zone so things can be sorted out. Okay, so let's launch in. As I say, Heart Internet is the company that I use. If you go to their website, heartinternet.uk, you can go to Reseller Hosting, and you can set yourself up a reseller account. Now you can see that it starts at £31.49 plus VAT per month. And obviously it depends on the level of service that you're looking for, but generally speaking, you set up a basic reseller account and then you can upgrade it later on if you need to anyway. Now, assuming you are going to go on and develop websites for clients, and that's what you want to do, that's why you're taking this course, then I recommend you do set up a reseller account. If you prefer, if you're just a business that just wants one site or maybe just a couple of sites, then there may be alternatives available to you that keep your costs down, because obviously with a reseller account you're committing to somewhere between £30 and £60 usually per month for the service that they provide. But bear in mind, certainly with Heart Internet anyway, this may not be true for other hosting companies, but that's an unlimited account, so I can run hundreds if not thousands of domain names on that reseller account and still carry on just paying £60 per month or whatever it is, the deal you get. But in reality you probably wouldn't run that many sites on a single reseller hosting account. You might want to spread them over different hosting companies just in case anything does go wrong with one, then the other still continues to work, and not all of your clients are unhappy at once. Anyway, so assuming you're going to set up a reseller account, once you've set up your account and you log in, then this is what you're going to be looking at. This is the reseller control panel. And you will only see this if you have a reseller account, of course. The various options down the right hand side here and the options on the left. Now pretty much the icons here in this block do exactly the same things as the navigation buttons on the right. I tend to use the navigation on the right more than the icons on the left, and that's just my personal preference, but it's entirely up to you. So you see the sections are broken down into navigate, hardly do anything there. Order, that's relating to any services that you want to order. You might want to order some domain names, some web hosting, premium hosting, etc., etc. Very rarely do I use anything in this section. Manage is where you're managing things that are already set up. Now this is the section that I use mostly. Service is really to do with anything that goes wrong. You might want to contact the support department and find out what's going wrong. But on the whole, I go into this Manage section and I will click on Reseller Control Center. That takes me to another section within the Reseller Control Panel. You see the icons on the left have changed. The navigation on the right has changed as well. Now this is where I can pretty much do everything that I need to do in terms of setting up a new client or managing an existing client in terms of their website, their email, the FTP accounts, etc., etc. Now we're going to go on and install WordPress in the subsequent module, the next module, but you cannot install WordPress unless you've got some sort of host in order to set up your server and install WordPress. Now, you can install WordPress locally on your machine, and you'll see a lot of tutorials about how to do that. I don't do that. I never do that. It seems like a lot of hassle in order to run it locally and then have to move it to a server. So I tend to work on what will effectively become the live server of the domain or the website, whether the domain is registered or not. Now, if you register a domain name, you can register it through Heart Internet, or you can register it elsewhere and then point it to the Heart Internet server, which we'll go on to later. But let's assume that we're going to register it through Heart Internet. You would click on domain names. You would search for your perfect name. Oh, sorry. Let's just turn off caps lock. Domain name is always lowercase anyway. Whether you've typed it in uppercase, it will revert to lowercase. Okay, so we're searching for a domain name called Your Perfect Name, and you see that yourperfectname.co.uk is available. All of these other domain extensions are available that it's listed here. The .com, it looks as though has already gone, although yourperfectnames.com is available. Now if I wanted to register that, I could just click add to my basket, go through the checkout process, and then I would own that domain name. Now I'm not going to register that now, so I'm just going to copy that and quickly just go back to my reseller control panel. Now here what I can do is I can set up what's called a domain reference. So what that will do is that will log the domain on my reseller account without me actually having registered the domain. I can either register it later, or I can continue to work on that domain even though I don't yet own it. Okay, so yourperfectname.co.uk, and I can click on add reference. Okay, and we just give that a second to process. Okay, so the page has reloaded. Now it says, thank you, your domain reference yourperfectname.co.uk has been set up. To activate web hosting for this reference, click here. Okay, so that's what I now need to do. I've registered the domain, or at least I haven't registered the domain. I've set up the domain reference with a view to registering the name later on perhaps. What I now need to do is to set up a hosting account through my reseller account to use with that particular domain name. So I can either click here, or I can click on the navigation over on the right hand side where it says add hosting accounts. Okay, so in my drop down list here I will see all the domains that I've got that I haven't actually got hosting accounts set up against at the moment. So the yourperfectname.co.uk appears at the bottom there in alphabetical order. So I click on that. I'm going to set it up as a Linux server, which I'll always do if I'm using WordPress. If I was doing any Windows software, like using any of the Windows development tools, I might want to set up a Windows server, but I have hundreds of domains, not any of them are running on Windows. So I always set it up on Linux. And I set the package as unlimited hosting, which is basically all of my clients have access to everything. That's because I control their accounts and I want access to everything. Now, if you were providing a hosting facility to your clients whereby you don't want to give them access to FTP, for instance, you could set up a package that didn't allow that, but that's beyond the scope of this course. Let's just leave it as the default at the moment, because that is how it will be set up when you set up your your reseller account. Okay, so we click Activate Hosting, and there we say, thank you, web hosting account activated for yourperfectname.co.uk. To manage your web hosting accounts, click here. So again, we've got access to it on the left-hand side, but we've also got it on the right-hand side here as well. So I'm going to click on Manage Hosting Accounts. Sorry, I had a call come in there. I'll just get rid of that. Okay, so here are a whole load of domain names that I've got listed. So I'm just going to search for Your Perfect, and that gives me the name I've just set up. Now I'll just run through a few things here because it's important. Now these links on the right hand side here underneath Control Panel and underneath Manage Domain allow you to do various different things. So the Control Panel Customer allows you to go in and change the customer details. So that's effectively the name or email, the name you've registered the domain name to, the details that it's registered to. You could go in and edit those there. Super User, which we're going to go into in a second, gives you access to all of the tools that you need relating to the website itself and the WordPress install, email, FTP, etc., etc. We're going to go on to that in a second, so I'll just run through these other two. So the domain gives you access to the name server details, the A record, the MX record, all of which you'll know because you paid attention in the previous module, so you'll know what that terminology actually means. So if you want to make any changes to the name server DNS records, that's where you would do it. And the CP means control panel, so that's the control panel specifically for that domain. Now you pretty much have access to everything within the control panel via this super user link, whereas if you wanted to give access to your client just to the control panel for this domain only, then you would want to give them, you would set it up through there, because otherwise if you give them your reseller account login, they'll have access to all of your domains. So let's get into the real nuts and bolts here. So we're going to click on Super User. Now this is going to open a new tab. Okay, so you see this was the tab that was open before. Clicking on Super User opens a new tab. Now what you see is that I've now got the control panel. This is the control panel just for this domain. Now if you have other domains on your reseller account, you'll see them all listed here, but because I've clicked on it from here, from this domain name, I've clicked on Super User, it's opened the yourperfectname.co.uk control panel. So you see a similar setup, left-hand side icons, right-hand side some other navigation, or at least this is more not navigation as such. It gives you information about this particular domain itself, and crucially it gives you the FTP setup details. This is how you would manage the hosting related purely to this domain. So you can see that we've got various file manager tools. This is where we'd set up email, mailboxes, mail forwarding accounts. This isn't really covered in the course, although there's plenty of information about this on the Heart Internet website itself. We're concentrating purely on developing the WordPress side of things on this course. Web Stats and Logs gives you tools that will allow you to view how many people are visiting your website. There are alternatives, of course. Google Analytics is used by a lot of people, but these are some inbuilt tools that Heart Internet provide. Web tools relate more to some of the code setups, the database, and MySQL, for instance, is the database that will be behind WordPress once we've actually got it set up. Subdomains, this is where you would set up subdomains if you wanted to do so, and obviously you know what a subdomain is now, but very rarely would you use that unless you were working perhaps in the corporate world where they might want you to set up a subdomain, but it's unlikely because they'd probably have their own IT department where they'd be handling all of that anyway. Website help and diagnostics, I really don't use anything there. I don't use anything in web resources. I don't use anything in e-commerce. I do e-commerce sites, but I don't use any of the tools within here in order to set that up. And then we get CGI scripts. Now you see that WordPress blog is the first one in the list. You can, with Heart Internet, you can also install some other tools if you want to, or you want to learn how to use them. Joomla, similar to WordPress. A lot of people, you're in one camp or the other really. You're either a WordPress developer or a Joomla developer. I prefer WordPress. I've looked at Joomla and it looks too complicated for me. But there are Joomla developers out there, and a lot of sites are built on Joomla, and it's another open source piece of software, very similar to WordPress, but with different features. They both have pros and cons. Some of these other things you might want to take a look at. View the Heart Internet tutorials related to all of these things if you do want to use them. As I say, I don't use any of them except WordPress. That's the only one I use. Okay, and then finally what we're going to look at here is FTP, because at some point you will likely need to set up an FTP account, and an FTP account is always relates to a single domain. So we're working on this domain, yourperfectname.co.uk, so I'm going to set up an FTP account in order to connect to this domain on the server that I've just set it up on, which is hosted by Heart Internet. So by default, FTP is locked, and that's for security reasons. Now, you have a couple of options. You can either unlock it for a period of time, 4 hours, 1 day, 7 days, 28 days, or you can unlock it by IP address. Now, this is the IP address of the machine that I'm working on at the moment. So if I unlock it for that IP address, what it's doing is it's saying it will let my machine connect via FTP to this server without any further security requirement. Obviously I've got to put the username and password in, but it's not going to block me beyond that. Now, if I go home, for instance, I'm working in my office today. If I go home and I connect via my home machine, it will have a different IP address, so I would be locked out. I would have to go in, log into Heart Internet, log into my reseller account, log into, or at least connect via super user to this domain, and then unlock it for the IP address that I was working on at that particular time. So in that instance, if you know you're going to be working on a number of machines, you might want to unlock it generally for a period of time rather than a specific IP address. Okay, so what tool do I use to connect to FTP? I'm on a Mac and I use something called Yummy FTP Pro. Now, there are lots of FTP programs out there, and you can download some for free. You can buy them. I bought this from the App Store, Yummy FTP Pro. If you're on a PC, I'm not sure if Yummy FTP works, but there will be an FTP program available to you, and they all work in a very similar way. But I'm going to show you how Yummy FTP works, and I'm going to add a new account now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight in this FTP section here, highlight the username and copy it. Then I'm going to go to my Yummy FTP window and I'm going to click Add. And that's going to give me another dialog box where it's asking me for the server name, the username, the password. The port is already set. The local path I've got set to go somewhere, that'll be by default when you install, that'll look to something else. But that's basically the local path that comes up in the left-hand side of the window, which will be evident when I actually make the connection. So I've got my username copied to the clipboard. I'm just going to copy it into the name field, and then I'm going to copy it into the username field as well. Then I'm going to go back and click here to show the password and just copy that. So by default it gives you that password, or at least it sets up a password for you. You can go in and change that if you want to later on, or you can add additional FTP accounts with different passwords, but that's the global password for this particular domain reference. Sorry, I pasted that into the wrong place, so I'll just get rid of that. Paste that into the password field, and then finally the FTP server IP address. Now, once you've actually set up FTP, and once you've registered the domain, you may want to use the FTP server ftp.yourperfectname.co.uk. Now, because this isn't an actual registered domain, I'm going to use the FTP server IP address in order to connect to that server, because this FTP .yourperfectname.co.uk will not work because the domain is not registered. However, I can still connect to it using the IP address. Now, whether a domain is registered or not, I prefer just to use the IP address because it will just work every time, whereas sometimes you might get a problem with the ftp.yourperfectname.co.uk or whatever domain name you're using, that is. Okay, so that's it. So I now click on Save That. Then I just have to go and find that in my list of domain names. So then I'll just double click on it. Let's just get rid of this in the background. Okay, so now what we're looking at is, this is the path that I set in, if I go and have a look in here, this where it says local path here, this is the path that I've set for the left-hand side of the window to go to. So you see it's gone to install standard. So these are just my standard plugins that I install that we'll come to later on. So in the left-hand side, we're looking at my local machine. The right-hand side, we're looking at the server. So this is the server at Heart Internet on which this domain is located. So we've got a number of folders here. We've got CGI bin, TMP, and public HTML. Everything is in public HTML. So you see there's just one file there at the moment, index.html. Now, if we were to go to yourperfectdomainname.co.uk, we won't get anything because it's not a registered domain at the moment. However, I do have it set up on Heart Internet as a domain reference. Therefore, there is a temporary web address, and I can access that temporary web address over on the right hand side within the domain control panel by clicking on this link, visit website. So again, it opens a new tab, and there it is. Now what that is the IP address of the server on which this domain is sitting, waiting for me to register it. Now if I register it and I get it as an actual domain name, that IP address will become the A record, and it can then be removed altogether. And then when I click on that, it will go to a proper website. You'll see this. But for now, because it's not a registered domain name, we have to put the IP address in front of it in order to get to it. Now, this facility is not necessarily available at every host, but it's a really useful facility that Heart provide in order for you to start working on a website without actually registering a domain name. So you might want to start working on a website and the client has already registered the domain name somewhere else, but you want to carry on working on it and then point the domain name over to your server when the site is ready to go. Okay, so when we look at the temporary address, what we see is welcome to your new hosting package. This is your index.html page. Please replace this when you upload your site. Okay, so that is what's contained in this file here, index.html. I'm actually now just going to copy it across to my local machine by just clicking transfer. I moved it across to this side. So then what I can do is I can just open it in text editor and show you what it actually looks like. Actually, can I show you? View, not sure I can open, no, sorry. Let's open it in Word. You may be able to access the HTML itself. Okay, Word takes a little bit of time to open on my machine. Okay, so what's going to happen is, if we can see that, great, otherwise, here we go. Okay, so we can just about see it here. This is the HTML code that's making up welcome to your new hosting package. So it's saying center, put it in the center, H1 tag, which is the heading tag, which determines what the font and typeface looks like. this is your index.html place, please replace this when you upload your site. So that's simply what that file is. I won't bother opening after all. Okay, so that by default is what's put into your public HTML folder, and that's your hosting package pretty much set up. Now what we're going to go on and do in the next module is install WordPress, and that's where things start to look very different and things begin to get really exciting. See you in the next one.